Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we're going to get you caught up on everything that's happened and everything that will happen in the wide, wild world of sports, including last night. Caroline Fenton thought it was going to be bad, and it was even worse. It was an absolute sheer bloodbath as the Steelers fall to the Texans 30-6. That's right. 30-6. At one point in the first half, we were saying defensive struggle. By the end of this thing, no, it was just an everything struggle for Pittsburgh. Texas took him behind the shed and just absolutely whooped up on Pittsburgh.
Whooped them. Total and complete defensive domination. And I feel like the Texans were dominating the Steelers in pretty much every single statistical category except the score until the fourth quarter. I mean, you look at the differences in this game. When CJ Stroud coughed up 3 turnovers, the Steelers turned that into 3 points. On the other hand, the Texans were able to turn 2 Steelers turnovers into 14 points. You know, when the Texans were able to convert 10 of 15 third downs, the Steelers 2 of 14. Talk about lockdown third down defense. When the Texans put up over 400 yards, the Steelers couldn't even muster up 200. The Steelers just totally looked befuddled. Everything that they wanted to do offensively, they looked totally and completely befuddled. The Texans defense, as we've talked about for so long, as we've known how just locked down they can be, the Texans defense last night was absolutely feasting. And I stepped away from that game really for the first time considering if the Texans are true Super Bowl contenders. Because we know we've seen several defensive-minded teams win Super Bowls defensively. We've seen it with the Broncos with Peyton Manning, even though that was kind of a shell of Peyton Manning, they won that Super Bowl defensively. I don't trust this Texans offense. Obviously, no Nico Collins. Wish him the best. He was carted off the field last night with an injury. Like I said, CJ Stroud was just reckless with the football. 2 fumbles, 1 pick last night. I don't trust this Texans offense, but is the Texans defense good enough to carry them to a Super Bowl after what they did to the Steelers last night? That's the first time I'm legitimately thinking to myself, yes, they can be.
Look, I don't trust any team that can't play complementary football, and I'm not sure that the Texans can play complementary football because their offense is broken. And this is so much of what we've talked about from day one with CJ Stroud, who had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen. And since then, we've known that the ability is there. But last night, it's all about that unit. You're 1,000% right. This Texans defense, which is, I think, the best single unit left in the entire playoffs, is capable of carrying Houston, I should say, all the way to the Super Bowl. Yes. But at some point, they're going to have to get more from their quarterback. I get it that, this is a weird year in the playoffs, and maybe one unit can dominate their way all the way to hoisting the Lombardi. But, man, your quarterback's got to be better than 3 turnovers in this game, especially because, look, I think the Steelers were outmatched. That's why I thought it was going to be a bad game to begin with. The Steelers were outmatched. So this is by far the least worthy opponent that the Texans are going to see throughout the course of this entire playoff run. And that's the offense they gave us. Don't let it fool you. 30 points did not all come from the offense. And again, the back was really broken on a defensive touchdown that put this thing out of reach. So while we'll all look at the Baltimore Ravens back in the day as a team that, man, it didn't matter if Dilfer was their quarterback. They could win because their defense was so good. That's such the exception, not the rule. I love this Texans defense. I think, again, it's the best single unit left by any team in the playoffs. It is so swarming and fun to watch. I just don't trust their offense. Caroline, let's get to the other side of this coin, though, because what we saw last night was absolutely a shellacking of the Steelers, and now we got to figure out what the hell's next. And look, let's start with Aaron Rodgers in this because Mike Tomlin's also a deep conversation. I will go to our buddy Nate Tice, our teammate at Yahoo Sports, Nate Tice, who tweeted this out. There have been 283 instances where an NFL quarterback had 20 or more pass attempts in a playoff game since 2013. Aaron Rodgers' game tonight against the Texans ranked 283rd in dropback success rate and EPA per dropback. Like, Aaron Rodgers looked overwhelmed throughout the course of this entire game because the Steelers were outmatched by a much better defense.
Yeah, and there were a few throws that would have been pop off the page kind of throws. Like look at that DK Metcalf target early in that game in the first half. It hit him right in the hands and he just drops it. So there were opportunities to be had that aren't on Aaron Rodgers. But it is kind of sad to me, Fitz, making the assumption that Aaron Rodgers is going to decide to hang it up after this season. He's kind of been alluding to that for a while. We'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers' future. I will be kind of sad, though, if the final lasting impression that we have of Aaron Rodgers is the pick six that we saw last night. That was just kind of the perfect encapsulation or perfect cherry on top of what that game truly was. And that was the Texans defense doing whatever they wanted to that Steelers offense. And the Steelers offense kind of stepping back and looking like, I don't even know how that just happened, but it did. But it does feel like this is the end of Aaron Rodgers, doesn't it?
It does. And then we start to wonder how we'll remember Aaron Rodgers. And the funny thing is that in a lot of ways, Aaron Rodgers spent his entire career being compared to Brett Favre, obviously. To me, the way this is all ending is going to be reminiscent as well, in the sense that when we think about Brett Favre now, we rarely talk about Brett Favre with the Jets or Brett Favre with the Vikings. We talk about Brett Favre and what he did with the Packers. And when we watch the highlights of Brett Favre, we look at some of those great moments. Almost all of those, it feels like, are in the Packers jerseys. It's in the Packers in our minds. Like, that's how we've now remembered Brett Favre. I think that's where we'll get to Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't really matter what happened for the Jets or the Steelers. The bulk of his career was spent doing things that no other quarterback could do, being one of the best in the game, being one of the best of all time. And as much as there are other conversations now that happen around Aaron Rodgers all the time, we have to remember that when we talk about Hall of Fame candidacy and when we talk about who players are and what their legacy is, so much of that is just what did they do on the field. And as we get farther removed from his time in Green Bay, I look forward more and more to the opportunity to just sit back and remember Aaron Rodgers at Green Bay, because that's where he was at his best.
Whenever I look back on the career of Aaron Rodgers, I'm not going to think about the true and utter train wreck that was the New York Jets, mostly because I don't think that's Aaron Rodgers' fault. We have a long history of train wrecks in the New York Jets, so I blame the Jets organization for that. Aaron Rodgers had some really high highs this season. There are moments during the season with the Steelers where Aaron Rodgers did look like his former Green Bay self, and that was so fun to watch, to be able to truly enjoy some of the final moments of, as you said it, one of the greatest players to ever play the position. But I will remember his time in Green Bay. I'll remember his time and how fun it was in Green Bay. The back-to-back MVPs in Green Bay. The Super Bowl in Green Bay. I'll think about how fun that team was to watch because Aaron Rodgers was quarterbacking it. I don't think it's fair to what he's done and what he's accomplished to linger on or to harp on the lows that have been the last 3 years of his career. But I think he will be and should be and is remembered as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the position. Or are we going to remember the quirkiness of Aaron Rodgers and the ayahuasca of it all and the darkness retreats of it all and him putting his foot up on the table at a post-game press conference of it all? Sure, we will. The enigma of Aaron Rodgers, because I think that's just kind of what makes him, the mystery man that he is off of the field. But I think he deserves to be remembered as the MVP he was in Green Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is always weird because right now, when we look at the body of work of Aaron Rodgers, it's hard to remember how dominant the early stuff from Aaron Rodgers were. That's just how we are as a society. He's not even that old. I know he's old for an NFL quarterback, but it is funny that we have to sometimes step back and sort of remind ourselves of how impossible it was to stop the best of Aaron Rodgers. The best of Aaron Rodgers early in his career could make throws that nobody else could make. And the best of Aaron Rodgers could run around in a way nobody else in the league could run around at the time. So that I look forward to getting back to that portion of Aaron Rodgers. Now, that's the easier conversation to have of what's next for the Steelers, because as we sit and try and figure it out now, the question is what's going to happen with Mike Tomlin. We've spent weeks, maybe months, maybe years at this point, Caroline, speculating about the future of Mike Tomlin. Certainly, if you are in the camp that Tomlin has to go, last night didn't put any of those fires out. When you lose 30-6 in the first round of the playoffs, continuing your now playoff losing streak to whatever 3,000 days or whatever it is. Now all of a sudden, Mike Tomlin, the first Steelers head coach to have a 9-year stretch with no playoff wins. Certainly the way it went down last night will reignite those fires even hotter for some people.
Yeah, I think it's fair to question not just did we see the last of Aaron Rodgers in his career, but did we see the last of Mike Tomlin on the Steelers sideline? I don't think the Steelers would fire Mike Tomlin, not after everything that he's done for that organization. I do think how Pittsburgh would move forward, it should move forward, is an amicable parting of ways. That, hey, Pittsburgh is ready to go in a different direction, and maybe Mike Tomlin is as well. And it feels like a very natural breaking off point. If Aaron Rodgers does decide to hang it up, and I know I heard Aaron Rodgers and what he said in that post game last night, and if Aaron Rodgers does decide to come back, I just called him an enigma. It wouldn't surprise me. Aaron Rodgers does what we least expect him to do. But let's just live under the impression that Aaron Rodgers is done. Well, the Steelers are going to need a new quarterback next year. They've been on the quarterback carousel seemingly every year since Big Ben retired. They don't really have very many players, and a big portion of their roster is old and toward the end of their career. But also, the Steelers have 5 top 100 picks, including one of the picks that they got back in return from the Cowboys for the George Pickens trade. So it feels like the Steelers are in such a transitional period at the quarterback position, really the entirety of the roster. They're now in a time where the Steelers can rebuild. Feels like the first time in a very long time the Steelers are in a position to rebuild. And the R word is a scary one. Rebuilding, if you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, probably sounds very scary. Does that sound scary to Mike Tomlin? Because maybe Mike Tomlin doesn't want to go through a Steelers rebuild. Maybe the Steelers say, hey, Mike Tomlin's the perfect guy to get us through a rebuild because he's been the face of consistency for so long. But I think at this point, it's time. It's time to get off the quarterback carousel. It's time to find a more permanent or at least a longer lasting solution at that position. Maybe it's time in Pittsburgh to just take a couple of steps back in order to take leaps and bounds forward. Let's get off of this carousel of going 9-8 and getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs. We've been doing that for the last decade. I think at some point that just gets tiring. At some point that gets stale. Right now, where the Steelers are right now as an organization and where their roster is constructed, it feels like the perfect point to just breathe and just release everything that's been the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last 10 years. Start fresh, start anew, and it starts at the head coaching position.
I everything you just said I agree with and I understand. I just think that we need to recouch the conversation around some of the failure we've seen over the last couple of years because the Steelers just haven't had a quarterback ever since Ben retired. And the funny thing is, I looked it up because it feels like Ben retired a decade ago. Ben retired in 2022. All right, so what's happened since then at the quarterback position? Well, in that 2022 draft, just months after he retired, they drafted Kenny Pickett, the first quarterback taken, I should say, that year in that year's draft. It was a bad year to draft quarterback. There weren't many available. They took Kenny Pickett. That turned out not to work. Every other year since then, they haven't picked anywhere near proximity of a quarterback. Now, you could argue last year maybe they should have gotten in the Jackson Dart sweepstakes. Maybe that would have been the great answer for them. I don't know. But certainly they brought in Aaron Rodgers because they thought that would help. None of that changes the fact that as of right now, the way the draft is working out this year, another year where there's no depth at quarterback, frankly, in the NFL draft expected, the Steelers are going to have the 21st pick. You're not getting a quarterback at the 21st pick in this year's draft. So be careful what you wish for, Steelers fans, because you're not really just wishing for a new coach. Whenever you get a new coach, you're going to need a new quarterback. This isn't the year to do that unless you think Malik Willis is a franchise savior, and I don't. But if you think Malik Willis is the franchise savior and you want to get into a bidding war, there will be one for him. All of a sudden, maybe you think that's the answer. I don't. So now I'm looking at you Steelers fans and I'm saying, fine, you want a new coach. Great. Understand that you got a lot of salaries you're going to have to dump, and you don't have a solution at the quarterback position at all. And you don't have an answer to proximity to a quarterback. So if your answer is we're just going to draft a quarterback, when? And if your answer is, well, we'll suck next year and then we'll get a quarterback, okay. I will remind everybody the thing I constantly say about the plan to tank. You cannot guarantee that you will outsuck the rest of the NFL to get that quarterback. Reminder that there were 4 teams this year, 4 that won 3 games. So no matter how hard you try to suck, you can't guarantee that you'll suck bad enough to get 3 wins, but not suck enough to actually get a top 2 or 3 pick, which you might need depending on How many quarterbacks come out? Steelers fans just keep yelling about the result, and they keep yelling about the quarterback, and they keep yelling about the fact that they haven't been competitive enough over the last few years. But nobody's actually sat down and looked at the map to how they got here and told me what Tomlin should have done that would have suddenly answered the quarterback position when they weren't in proximity to get it answered anyway. So I hear you if you want to get rid of Tomlin. I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for, because right now, you could argue, I will argue right now today, the Steelers have a tougher path to figuring out a quarterback than the Browns do. That's how bad it is right now trying to figure out what stability looks like at that position for the next 3 years.
Sam Darnold was on the street for anyone to sign. Daniel Jones was on the street for anyone to sign. Baker Mayfield was on the street for anyone to sign. If the Steelers wanted to pick up one of those quarterbacks in free agency, they could have, but they didn't. So it's not fair to say they didn't have a path. Drafting a quarterback, I will agree with you on that. And the best shot that they had at drafting their future quarterback was Kenny Pickett. And obviously, we know how that turned out. So I hear you on there hasn't been a clear path to a quarterback. But isn't that their job? Isn't that Mike Tomlin's job? And I hear you on life after Tomlin, or life in while you're swimming through the sea of sucks. And it's scary. But I think for Steelers fans, where they are right now and continuing the same pattern of 10-7, 9-8, getting bounced in the same round of the playoffs, being the exact same team every year for the last decade, no matter what you do at the quarterback position or, in free agency at any other position, they get the exact same result. That maybe swimming through the sea of suck, or at least the sea of mystery, sounds more intriguing. They could be wrong, and they may regret that decision, but I don't blame Steelers fans for wanting something different.
I'm not sure Sam Darnold would have the success in Pittsburgh that he's had. He has a very particular set
Maybe
of skills.
Not. Same thing with Daniel Jones.
So I don't know the answer to that. I do hear you. I think fans just forget that while they make change for Super Bowls, sometimes you end up in the sea of suck. And it's quicksand, and it keeps you there. All right, we got a lot to break down over the course of the next couple hours, including coming up next. The AFC Divisional Round is set. We'll tell you what to look for in those matchups next. Oh, look at that sweet, sweet graphic. The brackets out. AFC matchups are set. Texans, Patriots. Buffalo takes on Denver. We hit the NFC yesterday, so we're going to do the same for the AFC, and we're going to take a look at some of these matchups we got. Caroline Fenton, which of the AFC matchups are you more excited for?
Oh, it's Buffalo, Denver. 1000% it is Buffalo, Denver. As good as the makings of Patriots Texans, potential MVP quarterback and Drake May against the best unit that's remaining in the playoffs. Yes, that's very juicy. But I think Buffalo, Denver is the one for me because it has all of the makings of being absolutely, totally chaotic. It has all of the makings of being an all timer drunk kind of game that goes down to the wire because that's just kind of what both of these two teams have been. Josh Allen against that defense. What can Bo Nix do at home? Holding down home turf. So many times this year, we've seen Broncos games come down to the wire. And Bo Nix, even though he's not my favorite remaining quarterback in the field, and that is maybe the understatement of the century, Bo Nix can be Mr. Clutch whenever he needs to be. We know Josh Allen is the king of clutch, so it's Buffalo, Denver, just for all of the cinema that I expect it to end up being. But what about you, Fitzy? What's your the game you're most looking forward to?
You're 1,000% right. This is the game. But here's what hit me about this, because we keep talking about if not now, then when for Josh Allen. Like everybody keeps saying, oh man, no Lamar, no Joe, no Mahomes. Like go up and down the list. Josh Allen better get it done. Think about the path that is sitting in front of the Bills. To get to where they are, they had to beat the number one rushing defense in Jacksonville. Now they have to go to Denver, where they will take on the Broncos defense. It's absolutely wildly renowned. I think their gift for that, taking on one of the toughest defenses in the league, will then likely be an AFC championship matchup, in my opinion, against the Texans, which would be the best single unit left. Even if it's the Patriots defense is playing absolutely lights out. When you think about the path that Josh Allen is going to have to go through to try and will the Bills to a Super Bowl, it's the best three defenses in the AFC week to week to week. Like we are going to, Josh Allen is not going to be allowed to be anything short of Superman, Batman, Robin, all of them like rolled into one. Josh Allen is going to have to be near damn perfect every week to win this, but that's where the intrigue comes from, because I truly do feel like, yes, there is, you always say politely and correctly, no disrespect. Let me say this with as much disrespect as I can rolling off my tongue. The rest of the Bills don't scare anybody, right? So I know Cook is going to be the answer for some people, but that doesn't happen without Josh Allen. So we're looking at that man right there single-handedly winning a battle royal. Like that, to me, that's a storyline I want throughout the entirety of the AFC playoffs, Caroline.
And the storyline is Josh Allen. And every single step along the way in this postseason, the stakes get higher and higher for Josh Allen because nobody cares that Josh Allen's going to have to go on the road at Jacksonville, like you just mentioned, the number one rush defense in this field, and then go to Mile High Stadium, maybe one of the most difficult places to play in the National Football League, against that Denver Broncos defense. Again, one of the best in the NFL. And then if they get through that, oh yeah, by the way, you're going to be facing the potential MVP in Drake May and that Patriots defense that's looking better than it has all season long. Or maybe the best defense in the entire National Football League in the Houston Texans. Nobody's going to care how difficult that path is because we all are so obsessed with quarterbacks. And we're all so obsessed with the fact that Josh Allen doesn't have Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or Aaron Rodgers standing in his way. So the stakes are going to get that much higher because the narrative surrounding Josh Allen isn't, look how difficult this path is. The narrative surrounding Josh Allen is, you better do it now because I don't know how many opportunities you're going to get in the future doing it. So I think from here on out, the most intriguing matchup for me is going to be whichever one the Buffalo Bills are involved in because of that man right there, because of the stakes, his legacy, what's left for Josh Allen to achieve this season. And if he doesn't get it this year, the narrative moving forward will become, will Josh Allen be one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen to never win or get to a Super Bowl?
You're 1,000% right. And it's why all the times that we've sat here and said Allen versus Mahomes, I'm the one weenie in the room pushing my glasses up saying, well, actually, Mahomes and Allen don't play each other. It's Allen versus their defense and Mahomes versus their defense. And like, I'm just giving credit to the run.
Technicalities.
It's not as sexy. All right, so let's get the quarterbacks out of the conversation because quarterbacks boo. All right, which non-quarterback on these four AFC teams that we have left, which non-quarterback, we're talking about the Texans, the Patriots, the Buffalo Bills, and the Denver Broncos, right? Which non-quarterback is the biggest X factor in the divisional round to you?
I think it's James Cook, mostly because I don't trust these Bills receivers. I don't trust
Mm.
Khalil Shakir or Brandon Cooks. I don't trust Keon Coleman. I don't trust any of this receiving core in Buffalo. I don't trust really a majority of the rest of this Bills team outside of Josh Allen and James Cook. So against that Denver defense, against that Denver secondary, any of these receivers against Pat Surtain, I don't trust any of them. So Josh Allen can't do it himself, and he at least can't do it himself for 4 full games on the path to an eventual Super Bowl. Josh Allen looks like a different quarterback, and this Buffalo Bills team looks like a different team, more dominant, more explosive team whenever James Cook can get going. I think if James Cook can have a 100+ yard game, you feel so much better because Josh Allen doesn't have to be Superman, even though he is Superman, even though he can be Superman really on any given down in any given game against any given defense. James Cook is really the secret sauce and the X factor and the motor that keeps that Bills offense going outside of Josh Allen. Don't ask Josh Allen to do everything every game against the best defenses in the league.
I think you're right. And by the way, I just keep thinking that the meeting this week when they're working on the game plan, like they just bring Cook and Allen into the offensive coaching staff's office, and the guys say, "What's the plan this week?" And the coaches just say, "Sure, whatever you want," because those two guys are the only offense you can trust. Like, whatever you guys dial up, we're going to be okay with. I don't think you're 1,000% wrong here that Cook is absolutely key. I'll give you one other name though that just stood out to me, recency bias watching it last night. Will Anderson Jr. and the way that he rushes the passer is so influential. Last night, go back and rewatch anybody the sack that turned into the fumble recovery for a touchdown. Will Anderson lined up so far wide, it was actually awkward. He was so far down the line of scrimmage. I looked at it and thought, what are they doing? And then he took this weird angle and just bent under the offensive lineman and knocked Rodgers, you know what, So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, man, the impact of either Anderson or Danielle Hunter, I had to pick one, of those two edge rushers is so incredible for this Texans defense, and no offensive line so far has had an answer for it. Nobody has really figured out what to do. The Texans defensive line does such a great job of sealing the pocket off and then making the quarterback decide to move up. But if he moves up, he's going to be met by everybody else on that defense. So I look at an X factor. I don't know how you slow down Will Anderson, but I just want to remind everybody that, to your point that we just made about quarterbacks, as obsessed as we are with quarterbacks in our conversation, you could argue at this point, C.J. Stroud wasn't the most important pick in that draft for the Texans. It might have actually been Will Anderson. There's your hot takery coming. We'll keep breaking it down. A lot to get to over the course of this matchup and over the course of this week as we have some epic matchups in the playoffs. But got to get to some NBA. Friend of the show, Tom Haberstroh, going to join us next. We'll get his thoughts on a wildly changing league. What we thought was good is now bad, and bad is good. Figure it out. Ime Udoka says, you took a 37-year-old out of the game for 2 minutes and you lose a 13-point lead, 11-0 run. Don't play with any aggression, confidence, mentally weak. The fact that we have to rely on a 37-year-old for 40-plus minutes is a problem. That's weird for me to hear when I'm much older than that. But either way, we're going to talk to Tom Haberstroh about this now. Tom, the KD experiment with the Rockets roster is not going as smoothly as it did as the start of the season. How worried are you about Houston right now?
Out of 10, my worry level is about a 3. This is still the team with the second best point differential in the NBA. They've had a rough stretch here in the last 5 games. The team has shot below 25% from downtown on over 30 attempts per game. Guys, let me give you a stat here that has never happened in NBA history, that a team has shot that poorly from downtown in 5 straight games. That, to me, is more make-or-miss league. Bad luck for them on the three-point shooting column. Jabari Smith and Amen Thompson have combined during that streak to shoot 6 of 46 from downtown. I could shoot better than 6 of 46 from downtown. You give me those looks on the perimeter. I think the Houston Rockets have a little bit of growing pains here because Ime Udoka famously wants to win a championship and wants to fast track this development for guys who are 22, 23, 21 years old. Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Reed Shepherd. These guys aren't Ime Udoka age range in terms of what he wants on a team. I think he wants veteran guys. He wants them to be able to play crunch time minutes and be more assertive. But when they're not hitting shots, this becomes a lot more evident that they're a super young team mixed with, of course, Steven Adams and Kevin Durant. It's a mixed mass roster here with the Houston Rockets, but I promise you, the answer isn't Fred VanVleet coming back at the end of the season. They just need to keep handing the keys to the young guys and hope that they come through with their shooting from downtown. Because, yes, I was working that game, the Blazers game, when Ime Udoka went off on the team for being mentally weak. I think mentally weak translates to just super young, and I think he wants Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., and Reed Shepherd to play like they're 30 years old rather than 20 years old.
All right, Tom, let's stick in the West and look at the Lakers, who are now on a 3-game losing skid. And I think a lot of Lakers fans have started to be frustrated with some of Luka's defensive efforts. But is this a Luka defensive problem or a Lakers defensive problem?
I think it's all of the above. I think Luka Doncic at this point in his career needs to step up more defensively. He doesn't need to be a two-way guy out there, but here's a stat for you, is that in the NBA, we have these 3D camera tracking cameras all over the player tracking cameras all over the arenas, and what we can see is that Luka Doncic is the second least mobile player in the NBA on defense. Second least. The only other guy who covers less ground per minute on the floor defensively is James Harden. But if you look around the list of guys who do not move a lot defensively, a lot of them are hid on three-point shooters in the corner like Luka Doncic is. They are guys who are high usage, deep into their 30s guys like James Harden, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. Luka Doncic is not deep into his 30s, and yet he is one of the least mobile, least active defenders in the NBA. And a lot of that is because they ask him to do so much offensively, and he's not a guy who's going to be guarding the opposing best player. That's why they have Marcus Smart on the team. That's why they have Vando on the team. That's why they have Jake LaRavia on the team. They have 3-and-D guys who are not shooting well from 3 and are not playing well defensively. So they're not 3-and-D guys currently. And that's why I think it's a two-pronged problem, is that the Lakers are built to win a championship today in theory because they got LeBron James, Austin Reeves, and Luka Doncic on the team. But the supporting cast for Luka Doncic is abysmal. Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, and Jake LaRavia, they shot 1 of 15 from the floor in the game last night, 0 for 11 from downtown. You can't have Luka Doncic on your team and have guys who can't shoot the ball. That's just, it's a non-starter. It's why the Dallas Mavericks went to the NBA Finals surrounding him with 3-and-D guys who are willing to hit catch and shoot threes from the corner and getting those kickouts from Luka Doncic. Having the ability to knock down those shots is a big reason why that Dallas Mavericks team went to the NBA Finals. The Lakers do not have those role players on the team. And so it's both, yes, Luka Doncic needs to do more defensively, be more active, and help out in transition, not argue with officials. That's been a thing for his entire career. But the other side of this is the Lakers are definitely not having the right supporting cast around Luka Doncic. And I do think they should be, in the next month or so, trying to upgrade that supporting cast, because right now they have a worse point differential than the Charlotte Hornets. I'm going to repeat that, guys. The Los Angeles Lakers are getting beaten by a larger point margin than the Charlotte Hornets this season. So that is something that the Lakers have to be pragmatic about, is they are not a championship contender as it stands right now.
All right, Tom. So then I keep seeing reports linking Jonathan Kuminga to the Lakers. Is he going to end up in LA?
No, I think he's a Sacramento King eventually, and I don't think he's the answer there with the Lakers. If you need a 3-and-D guy, Jonathan Kuminga doesn't shoot threes and make them at a high clip, and he doesn't play a lot of defense. So, no, he is not the answer on the wing for the Lakers. I do think what's really interesting about this situation is this podcast with Max Kellerman and Rich Paul. I've never seen anything like this in media, in the NBA, is maybe the most prominent player agent in the game has a podcast in which he's arguing for the Lakers to trade Austin Reeves for Jaren Jackson Jr. Think about this. LeBron's agent, who LeBron plays, is out here in the media for The Ringer, and he is saying, hey, I really think that the Lakers should trade Austin Reeves for Jaren Jackson Jr. with the Memphis Grizzlies, who, by the way, is a Rich Paul client. Jaren Jackson Jr. Triple J is one of the guys that Rich Paul has been campaigning for on his podcast. You have to remember that he has represented a lot of the stars in the NBA, including LeBron and Anthony Davis. Everyone knows that. Draymond Green, just reading out the list for you so people at home can understand. Whenever you hear these names come out of Rich Paul's mouth on this podcast, you have to keep your third eye open and remind yourself why he's talking about them. Darius Garland, Fred VanVleet, Tyrese Maxey, Brandon Ingram, Zach LaVine. All of these guys are represented by Clutch Sports. So when you hear Rich Paul out here making trades, fake trades, or trade proposals for the Lakers, keep in mind that he represents a lot of those guys that he's talking about. So Jaren Jackson Jr. would represent, I think, an upgrade in terms of the defense, but it would be a huge cap hit. He just signed a max extension with the Memphis Grizzlies. And so, of course, when they are looking to trade Ja Morant, Rich Paul wants to be out here and saying, I want to get this guy in a winning situation. But I don't know if Jaren Jackson Jr. is the kind of vertical spacing threat, a lob threat that you would want to have next to Luka Doncic. Not the best fit, but certainly when people hear Jaren Jackson's name being in trade rumors because of Rich Paul, you have to remind yourself, he represents Jaren Jackson Jr. So keep your third eye open on that one.
All right, stick there for a second then, because I wanted to ask you about Ja Morant anyway. So we've got him up on the screen. What's the future look like for Ja Morant?
A lot like what Trae Young just experienced. I think right now Ja Morant is a negative trade asset. I don't think his contract and the off-court issues, I don't think they outweigh the on-court benefits of playing Ja Morant at this stage of his career. He's a non-shooter, ball-handling non-shooter who doesn't get to the rack like he used to. His dunk rate has plummeted. His attacking the basket paint points, he used to lead the league in paint points, and now it's collapsed for Ja Morant in the paint. You just don't see him being that kind of Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook above the rim player anymore. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with his age and the injuries that have piled up over the years. So when you look to acquire a guy like Ja Morant, you have to hope that he can dial back the clock, find that fountain of youth, and become the guy that at 22, 23 years old was dominating the league and getting into the paint relentlessly. But in today's NBA, with scoring at such a high level, you can find guys who are able to get into the paint and finish at a high level. Cam Spencer has been a better offensive player for the Memphis Grizzlies this season, far better than Ja Morant. And I think that speaks to how Ja Morant's abilities right now are far underwhelming what I think the expectation, the reputation, and the name value of Ja Morant. So for me, if I'm the Memphis Grizzlies, I am trying like heck to try to get some sort of market for Ja Morant, because at his contract, his age, in terms of how well he looks out there, he looks a lot older than he actually is. And I do think it's going to be tough to find a market for that guy with all the off-court issues, and it's going to look a lot like Trae Young's deal.
Let's stick on that for a moment then, because it's fair to question what the market for Ja Morant is. The Hawks got 0 picks in return for Trae Young. What does the market recently signal about some of these guards on these massive contracts? What is the market and the perception from GMs across the league?
Yeah, with this apron, the second apron, the first apron, the repeater tax, the way that the CBA works is it's really hard to have these monster contracts on your books and have any sort of cap flexibility. You're going to lose draft picks. You're going to lose the ability to add certain players into deals if you have a negative value contract like Trae Young and Ja Morant. Trae Young is probably the worst defender in the NBA, pound for pound. The Atlanta Hawks have had a real tough time playing with him defensively and covering up for all of his liabilities defensively. And Ja Morant is not a good defender either. So unless he's a 25, 30-point scorer, it's going to be tough for him to be able to make up that value on his contract. So Trae Young got traded for basically 2 bench guys. Think about it. He's been all-star for 3 out of the last 4 years, Caroline, and he was just traded for 2 bench guys and no first-round picks. And so I think this is indicative of just the larger currency of these type of contracts in the NBA. So Ja Morant, like if you want to have him on the Minnesota Timberwolves, good luck. But the only way you're going to be able to get him there at his contract is trading Rudy Gobert. Why would you trade Rudy Gobert if you're getting a guy like Ja Morant that needs to have a Rudy Gobert on the team? You're not trading Jaden McDaniels. You're not trading Rudy Gobert in order to match that salary number. And so I think it's indicative of how tough it is to move a Trae Young and Ja Morant. If you want to get a young player and get long-term benefits, long-term assets in terms of the contracts coming your way, good luck. I don't see it happening. I imagine he's probably going to be a Sacramento King or something like that. I keep bringing up the Sacramento Kings just because I don't know what they're doing. So if you can't project what the Sacramento Kings are doing, they'll probably do something like Ja Morant or Jonathan Kuminga. So I expect that to be more reasonable than, say, moving into the Minnesota Timberwolves.
The more I hear you talk, Tom, the more I continue to die on the hill that the best thing at the trade value is somebody you barely even knows in the league that probably actually plays defense as opposed to most of the stars that you're talking about. All right, one team that we continue to just put into the trade conversation are the Clippers, but let's be honest, they are hot, 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 hot. 10 of the last 12, they are on a heater. Are you buying this current iteration of the Clippers that is so hot?
No, because even as they are this hot, they're still 11th in the Western Conference outside of the play-in. The mountain is too high to climb for the oldest team in the NBA. Right now, we're looking at this team playing great with Kawhi Leonard and James Harden in the lineup, but so far, historically, that really isn't the case. We can't rely on the Clippers to continue playing at this high level when Kawhi Leonard has been one of the most injury-prone players in the league over the last few years, and then James Harden is getting deep into his 30s with a lot of miles in his tires. So I'm selling on the Clippers here just because I think this is best case scenario is that their guys are healthy. And I think when you have James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, you're going to give yourself a chance. But I cannot, for the life of me, expect them to play 80% of the games going forward, which is what it'll take for them to make it into the playoff picture. So, no, I'm selling on the LA Clippers, despite how well they've played as of late. They're still 16-23, and I expect a lot of missed games in their future just because the best predictor of injuries going forward is whether you've had injuries in the past. And for James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, I'm selling on their ability to stay healthy enough for them to contend.
Let's stick on the Clippers and what we've seen James Harden do here. Where does he rank for you when you look at some of the best, just pure scorers in NBA history?
Pure scorers, Caroline. So pure scorers in my mind, I'm thinking about guys who are mostly focused on scoring. I think James Harden is one of the great playmakers of all time. Like, he makes plays for himself and for teammates, a nightly triple-double threat, a guy that changed the NBA in terms of those step backs. He and Steph Curry really revolutionized the way to score in the NBA, creating space, having those threes early in the shot clock, pulling up in transition, step back, sidestep threes. Like, he is a top 10 scorer all time, but I wouldn't say he's a pure scorer. I'd say Kevin Durant or DeMar DeRozan, these guys are more pure scorers because they're not high assist guys, whereas James Harden, he's going to rank up there all time with the best assist guys. And I think when you look at James Harden, he revolutionized the position in terms of being a ball-dominant, heliocentric guy who you can create so much offense just by him having the ball in his hands and going downhill, getting to the free throw line, spraying out to shooters. He definitely revolutionized the position. Now, the question for me with James Harden is he an 82-game player or a 16-win player? Meaning, regular season, James Harden is an MVP candidate, but come playoff time, I really question his ability to have the endurance to be able to play at that level and having so much on his shoulders and so much creation, shot creation, and playmaking for teammates when he is at this stage of his career. And I do think that James Harden is one of the best regular season players of all time, and that's where that stat shows. 9th, and he's approaching Wilt Chamberlain. Congrats to James Harden on this, and I do suspect that when it's all said and done, we will look back on James Harden in his legacy in today's NBA and talk about how he revolutionized what it meant to be a scorer in today's NBA, coming off the bench for OKC and then becoming one of the greatest scorers ever. What a career for James Harden.
You can watch him on The Big Number here on Yahoo Sports. You can read his work on TomTheFinder.com and follow him on Twitter, X, at Tom Haberstroh. Tom, as always, man, we appreciate you answering the bat phone. Thanks so much for the great insight and expertise, my friend. Have a great day.
You got it. Anytime.
Appreciate you, Tom.
Tom, as always. Coming up next, there are a group of teams we can actually eliminate. They're gone. They cannot win the championship at all, and you'll be stunned by the names. We'll tell you who they are. Got some good data here from friend of the show, Matt Moore, on which NBA teams are on track for a title. This is what's important. 90% of title teams have won 40 games before hitting 20 losses. Only 2 champs with the seed lower than 3rd. So we're going to take that data right there, which is really important, and we're going to take a look at it and figure out, because you can see on the graphic that only leaves 3 teams that qualify: the Thunder, the Pistons, and the Spurs. So which teams, will get into that discussion, and which teams need their Larry O'Brien license revoked. God, I love that. All right, so this is what we're here to decide. So we'll start with the Lakers. We were just talking about the Lakers with Tom Haberstroh. They are not in this category. You got to get to 40-20. Only 2 champs with the seed lower than 3rd. That's a reminder. That is not the Lakers. What do you think? Are we revoking their Larry license, Caroline Fenton?
Yeah, it's revoked. Give it to me. Come on, cough it up, Lakers. Give me your LOB license, because when I look at this West, yes, it's incredibly dominant. It's incredibly deep. But I look at OKC. I look at San Antonio. I look at Denver. All teams that are elite. And defense wins championships around here. At least that's what they tell me. And the Lakers' defense is far too atrocious for me to view them as legitimate contenders against those teams that I just listed in the West. So because of their defense, I see you, LeBron. I see you, Austin Reeves. I see you, Luka, and everything they can do offensively and the fireworks that they have offensively and how fun it is to watch this Lakers team offensively. But when we're talking about Larry O, defense needs to be a little bit better in this iteration of the West. So I am revoking their license. Yes, I am.
Do you remember the cartoon Sword in the Stone, like where Excalibur, where he came up to the sword and like there's a big sword in a stone, and you try and pull it out, but only certain people can actually pull it out. Like this is one of those moments where Luka walks up to the sword and he starts to pull it out, and LeBron tries to help him. Austin Reeves, you got the big three, they're all yanking at the sword to try and get out of the stone. Ain't working. Take away the license. There's no chance. There's just look, this is one of those moments where whether it's causation or whether it's actual information, the way I look at it is that what this data is telling us is what we already know. If you just take your blinders off and you take the power of the purple and gold off and you watch this Lakers team most nights, you see what they're bad at. And we've been pretty consistent on this show in calling out what they're bad at. At some point, that doesn't fix itself. I don't think that there's going to be a moment where suddenly that locker room comes together and says, you know what we need to do? We need to recommit to perimeter defense for the next 6 months. It's either wired in you or it's not. You've either got that dog in you or you don't. And the Lakers defensively don't. The dog that the Lakers have defensively is a really old Chihuahua that doesn't feel like actually having to run outside anymore to go to the bathroom. That's all they got. Defensively, there is nothing left in the effort tank for the Lakers. They show it to you night in and night out. They're going to be a fun watch. They're going to beat a lot of teams. They got superstars. I personally really enjoy watching Lakers games because I don't really care about whether or not I see great defense. But I'm not going to rely on the Lakers to ever fix the defensive side of the ball to get themselves into it. So now that we've taken away their Larry license as it goes, let's take a look at somebody on the other side. How about we go to a team on the East where it's much more difficult to do any revocation? How about the New York Knicks? Second in the East. They are currently second in the East, so they would qualify top 3, but they are not on a 40-20 pace. So knowing that the Knicks, plus 1,200, not on a 40-20 pace, are you revoking their Larry license?
I am not. And maybe that sounds crazy because the Knicks have dropped 5 of their last 7. Maybe that sounds crazy because we just got done, you and I both, ripping the Lakers defense. And the Knicks are not on pace to finish nearly as high in defensive ratings than they have over the last several years when they were legitimate Larry O'Brien contenders. But I'm not willing to take them out of contention right now. It is, one, far too early, and we've seen far too much between Cat and Jalen Brunson, but also because I view the East as incredibly wide open. So why not the Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'll come in also and say, can we have a little grace on a new coach and a new system and a new everything? It wasn't that long ago the Knicks players were being asked about their roles, and they were saying, I don't really know what it is. That was during football season. Just so we're clear, during football season, Knicks stars were unsure of what their roles were going to be in this offense. So I feel like all of this needs a little grace of time, and they are, to your point, a top 3 seed. They are at some point. They're right behind Detroit. Do we really trust Detroit more than we trust the Knicks? There's enough star power. There's enough proof of concept. There's enough home court advantage. There's enough all these things in a wide open East. I just can't eliminate the Knicks yet. I think part of the conversation here is just about the difference in the East and the West also, because certainly if this exact Knicks team was suddenly put into the Western Conference, I'm out. At that point, no, I do not think that they could be. Yeah. We could take away their Larry license. In the East, I can't do that. So what about the Celtics then, while we're talking about the East? Mm-hmm. Because they're third in the East. They drop a heartbreaker to the absolutely pathetic Pacers last night. Are you revoking the Celtics Larry license?
I am not. It would be disingenuous of me to say I'm not revoking the Knicks Larry license because the East is wide open and then turn around and do that to the Boston Celtics. So for one reason, the East is wide open. I do think there's value to having been there before, which is another reason why I'm not revoking the Knicks license. Same reason why I'm not revoking the Celtics. There is value in having been there in some of the biggest moments in the postseason. And also because when you have a potential MVP on your team, which is exactly what Jaylen Brown has been this season, I'm not going to take you out of contention. He has been electric. He has been invaluable to the Celtics team. Now, would you feel better about the Boston Celtics if a little old man named Jason Tatum was available and on the court and 100% healthy? Of course you would. But the Celtics team has, based off of my expectations of not having Jason Tatum, have wildly exceeded those expectations, at least through January 13th. So no, the construct of the East, the construct of this team, what we've seen from that man right there, I am not revoking their Larry O'Brien license. I think the Celtics are firmly in this conversation, even if they haven't been incredibly dominant against some of the other teams that we view as legitimate championship contenders, combined 2-4 against the Knicks, Pistons, and Spurs. Even with that, they've got their license still.
When you start talking about Jaylen Brown, and look, I just pulled the numbers up to make sure I'm accurate to this moment, averaging 29.5 points a game, averaging 6.4 boards a game, 5 assists. When you start looking at just the step up here, again, I want to talk about adjustment, because I think there's a difference between OKC coming into a season off of an NBA championship where their biggest adjustment is complacency. That's a big difference between a Celtics team that's coming in without one of the biggest names in the entire league, trying to figure out what that's going to mean for the way their offense gels together, what that's going to mean for the way their team plays. So to me, even though they're not on pace, that's why I think I have grace to the 40-20 pace, is because I expected a slower start than this for the Celtics. So while they may not be on 40-20 pace, I think this year that might be a little bit deceptive because of some of the whys of how we got there. So I'm with you. I'm not revoking a license. I think the East is wide open, and it's part of the reason that anytime I see a trade proposal involving a team from the East, it makes way more sense to me, because you are in a rare let's go all in moment on the East if you're trying to figure out a way to win, as opposed to the West, which brings me back to Minnesota. The Timberwolves, are you revoking the Larry license of the Timberwolves, who, while we love Ant, are not within the parameters of this discussion?
We do love Ant, and I do love Ant. And when you have a certified superstar in this league, anything is possible. But I think I'm revoking it. Maybe just temporarily. Can I say I'm suspending their Larry O'Brien license, at least right now?
Yeah.
I'm suspending their license because, again, I will go back and say this West is so incredibly deep that when you look at the Spurs, when you look at Denver, when you look at OKC, those are the three teams. Those are the three teams that I trust, that I'm saying you have your Larry O'Brien license. I'm not taking that. Go ahead and put that in your wallet, put it under lock and key, because I trust those three teams. Outside of those three teams, I do have some trust issues. So I'm not revoking it, so to speak, Fitzy. I am suspending it because this is such a deep West, but I do love me some Ant.
I'm going to tell you right now, if y'all ever get a traffic ticket, you want Caroline to be a judge, not me, because I am revoking it, and I'm also giving them a stern lecture while I'm sitting there with my gavel and pounding your license has been revoked. Like, you got Ant. You got Ant. The problem is they need more than just Ant. And the problem with that is that I don't believe that there's anybody they're going to acquire at the trade deadline that's suddenly going to make up for that gap this season. Again, adjustment is real to me. I think it takes a minute for some of this to glue together and for everybody to get and feel each other out. So I am revoking the license, not only because the Timberwolves don't have enough, but I'm revoking the license because, frankly, OKC, Denver, and San Antonio in the West are just better basketball teams. Plenty more to break down, but coming up, we're going to get to some of the biggest news in golf and college basketball, all with the one man in the world that can do both. Jake Marsh going to join us next. The breaking news in the PGA is that they announced that Brooks Koepka will return to the tour and make his return in just a few weeks at the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines. And with that, we welcome on College Hoops play-by-play broadcaster for CBS and Fox, golf announcer for the PGA Tour Live, the one and only Jake Marsh. Jake, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. Let's start with Brooks. Everybody's talking about, we thought, in fairness, peek behind the curtain, thought we were just going to start and talk to you a bunch about college basketball, but then the Brooks news broke. So break down this moment, the move back to the PGA. What's it mean for these two leagues as there's potential for other players to return to the tour?
Yeah, no doubt. This is obviously an unprecedented situation for the PGA Tour. They created a whole program that was announced yesterday that Brooks Koepka is kind of spearheading, and kind of the qualifications for being in that category is you have to be a major champion or a players champion, which is viewed by many as the fifth major in the last 4 years. So you have Brooks, who's already jumped. You have Bryson DeChambeau, Jon Rahm, and Cam Smith, who are all eligible to make that move. I think what new CEO Brian Rolapp put together is a really fair and understandable set of ramifications, right? Because he has to make a $5 million charitable donation. Nobody gets harmed. In fact, that helps a lot of people. He's not going to be able to make money off the new player incentive program, so he's missing out on that. And most importantly, Brooks's joining of the PGA Tour is not going to hurt anyone who's earned their spot. He's not going to be replacing somebody in a field because of his status. He's only going to be added. So, for example, if it's a 125 player field, it'll be 126 if Brooks decides to play. He wouldn't be knocking out the last person in, which I think is by far the fairest move from everyone involved.
I want to take a quick step back for a second, because just full transparency, a big portion of our audience are basketball fans or football fans, not necessarily the biggest golf fans out there. So maybe if you could just add some context to the magnitude of this move. What does it mean, maybe in layman's terms, that Brooks Koepka is returning to the PGA Tour?
Totally. Well, think of it in this way. The NFL dominates for decades, and then another group decides to create a competitor alongside the NFL and steals some of the superstars, someone along the lines of Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson jumping and leaving the NFL to join this new league. Other guys follow suit, but now those big stars want to come back, and the future of that second league starts to creep in some doubt, and the power and the momentum of the NFL is gaining quickly and back to where it was. Everyone wants everyone playing in the same league. And I think that's why the majority of golf fans and the players should be very excited about this, because it's a big step towards getting all of the best in the same spot. And I think aside from the majors, you didn't really get that the last 5 years.
So what's the reception going to be like from the other golfers that chose not to take the live money, remain with the PGA, and now everybody's coming back together?
Yeah, totally. I think Brooks has the most work to be done with his fellow golfers rather than the fans. I think the fans shared the sentiments I just said in terms of, as long as everyone's playing under the same tournaments, I think that's what the fans care about the most. Some of the players might be a little aggravated because obviously he left to take a massive life-changing type of money at live, but now he's going to come back. He has to pay those penalties that we mentioned earlier. I think, again, the fact that he's not going to be taking any spots in some of these tournaments, I think helps the PGA Tour players who are loyal, in the sense that he's not coming back and stealing anybody's spotlight. But I'm sure there's some guys who turn down live offers that might be a little bit salty. But again, the PGA is so interesting because a lot of these guys are friends off the course, right? It's not like yes, technically they are going against each other, and their success depends on how the other players do, but it's not a team sport where you're literally facing off one-on-one. You're playing your own ball, and the scoreboard is the scoreboard. So I think there's a reason why a lot of these guys played together in these friendly events. You see two guys on your screen, Brooks and Rory, both have houses here in South Florida. A lot of the guys live here. A lot of the guys live in Arizona, California. So I think the camaraderie amongst the top guys has always been high. But obviously, again, unprecedented. So some guys might be salty, which is totally understandable.
I'm kind of here for that. I'm here for a little bit of friction, a little bit of rivalry. I think it's good for the sport. And you very smartly just painted why this is so good for everyone involved, specifically the PGA Tour. Obviously, Brooks Koepka has jumped ship. He may not be the last one. So what does this mean for Liv? Does Liv survive this?
I think that's the big question in the last 24 hours, right? Because the new plan that the PGA Tour set up allows Bryson, who you see right now, Jon Rahm, along with Cam Smith, to make a similar move. However, there was an explicit date that was named. I think it was February 2nd, where they have to decide. Live season, I think, starts a few days after that. And then the PGA Tour obviously starts this week, and the big signature events start to come in a few weeks as well. So these next 2-3 weeks are going to be massive for the future of Liv, because if Bryson DeChambeau, who is not only becoming one of the biggest household names in golf, but in all of YouTube and sports entertainment right now, follows back, I don't see how Liv can move forward in the United States in terms of popularity. I know they have a lot of success internationally. A lot of their events are done internationally. But if Bryson, an American who brought out that American flag on the first tee of the Ryder Cup, comes back along with Brooks, I don't know. But again, selfishly, I have my fan hat on right now. I'm not broadcasting. You want the best of the best together. And I think even from both perspectives, fan and broadcaster, it would be best to have everyone together, not just those 4 times a year at the majors.
All right, so you're a man of many hats. Let's get to one of your other hats. College basketball is one that you wear well and wear proudly. Let's talk a little bit about the landscape right now in this season, particularly Vandy. Vandy's 16-0 right now. Why are they not getting enough respect?
I think, honestly, because it's Vandy. It's not a household name, right? You have UConn and Duke. Arizona even is at the top of the rankings week in and week out, and they're going to make the headlines, right? But I think Vanderbilt, people who've been watching college basketball throughout the entire season, know how rare this is. And Vanderbilt has been at rock bottom in both of the major sports. They had a great year in football with Diego Pavia, and now the Commodores are going to be in the NCAA tournament and will have, obviously, they're undefeated right now, a chance to really make a deep run in the big dance. So again, they're in the SEC, which is the toughest conference in the league, some would argue. And we're just getting going with conference play. But they've set themselves up for a great position when the bracket comes out in 2 months.
Vanderbilt women's also undefeated. Candace Story-Lee, AD at Vandy, 80 of the year, and I don't even think it's close. But there's another team on the men's side that also maybe isn't getting the respect that they deserve, and that's Nebraska. Also unbeaten, sitting at 8th in the AP poll. So if we want to compare Nebraska and Vanderbilt, two of these two teams that maybe aren't getting their due, if you had to hitch your wagon to one of these teams, who do you trust more to make a longer run? Is it Nebraska or Vanderbilt?
Man, this is tough. And yeah, Nebraska deserves their flowers too, right? Known as a football school over the last few decades, but what Fred Hoiberg has done has been really remarkable. And I think both of these teams will be flashy picks to make deep runs just because it's new blood, right? And that's kind of been the theme in the playoffs, both college and NFL so far. You have teams that aren't usually in the mix make deep runs. So I think just because of the competition surrounding them, I think Vanderbilt right now, if both teams stay hot, will have survived a bigger gauntlet by the time we get to Selection Sunday. I think the SEC is stronger top to bottom than the Big Ten. So it's nothing against Nebraska. I just think Vanderbilt will be going through some bigger tests to appropriately suit them for a longer NCAA tournament run. But again, I'm usually wrong when it comes to these things, so I hope the Husker fans don't come after me.
I mean, look, we're all if any of us could get college basketball right, we'd own small islands during the NCAA tournament. I'm just saying. There's a lot of unbeatens this year, Jake, and I'm going to ask you a philosophical question because I think a lot of people are just now paying attention to college basketball. They've been watching college football, right? Now that we got 5 unbeatens. Michigan went down this weekend. They were unbeaten. What does it say about the current landscape of college basketball that so many teams are having dominant regular seasons so far?
I think it's honestly going to set us up for even more chaos because with undefeated teams, a handful of them that we just mentioned, there's going to be people who are filling out their brackets thinking, I know this team is guaranteed to make the Sweet 16. I know that Arizona or UConn are a write-in for the Final Four. We've all watched this tournament year in and year out. Any of the teams we discussed could easily be bounced in the first weekend. And I think that's what makes it so glorious. I think this year, while there are a few teams that have established their dominance in the regular season so far, the chaotic kind of structure of the NCAA tournament sets us up for even sillier outcomes. And I'm all for that. I know last year, a lot of people were angry that the majority of the tournament was chalk. We didn't get any Cinderellas, but we ended up with a great second weekend and Final Four. So I think no matter what, this tournament always delivers. And I think this regular season is proving that there are going to be people who are even more certain that some of the teams we just mentioned are going to be going to Indy for the Final Four. But who knows? It's 40 minutes. Anything could happen.
And to that point, the one thing that we can predict about the NCAA tournament is that it's unpredictable. It's silly. It's weird. Crazy things happen. Last year, like you mentioned, not necessarily the case. All 4 1 seeds were represented in the Final Four. If that trend breaks this year, who is the mid-major that you would trust the most to find themselves in the Final Four?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I glance off at the screen, looking at the rankings as well. There's a team that I called in November, and that's George Mason, led by Tony Skinn, who's an alum of the school. The Patriots out of the Atlantic 10. I guess kind of a gray area for mid-major, right? Because sometimes you get at-large teams, but I really like what the Patriots have done. A ton of transfers. In fact, one of their best players didn't even play the first few weeks of the season, Braden O'Connor. So I think George Mason out of the Atlantic 10 has an at-large potential. And I think similar to what we saw literally 20 years ago, 2006, when they made the Final Four. In fact, they just retired Jim Laranaga's name in the rafters in Virginia at their school. I think we could see a little bit of deja vu. In fact, Tony Skinn, the current head coach, was a player on that Final Four team.
All right, so let's pin you in because we've talked a lot about the great freshmen this year because it's so dynamic to watch. I'm going to make you the GM of whatever NBA team you choose that wins the lottery. You're picking first. Who would you pick first out of all of these great players that we're talking about right now in college basketball?
Man, it's really a crapshoot. You can't go wrong between H.A. Dybantsa, Cam Boozer. I think it's very top heavy this season in the draft. These freshmen in a era where it seems like the transfer portal is taking over and you're not seeing a lot of impactful freshmen in the sport anymore. These guys obviously are still proving that there is a small portion of freshmen who still are going to be one and dones. They're going to dominate in college. And this time next year, we could easily talk about both of these guys getting ready for their first NBA All-Star game. So it's just, again, you don't see it as much anymore, but they're still out there. And these freshmen are elite.
All right, before we get you out of here, I have to ask about your alma mater at Syracuse. And everyone's been very excited about Melo's son, Cayenne Anthony, coming back and playing for the Orange. Are they going dancing this year?
I really hope so. They haven't gone dancing since the COVID tournament in 2021. They haven't even really been in the conversation to do so. They have some nice wins this season. They beat Tennessee in the ACC SEC Challenge. So I hope so. I mean, the ACC isn't the strongest this year, so they have a chance to put together some nice wins. They have a tough bye game loss at home to Hofstra out of the CAA. Still a great conference, but that probably won't look too great on the resume. But it would be great. I would love to see Syracuse back in the dance. It's a school that really doesn't accept anything less. So the fact that they're on this tournament drought, I think the fans really need to see it.
All right, so you love Syracuse. You love Big J journalism. Give us your Mount Rushmore of Syracuse broadcasters. Come on.
Wow, you're really putting me in a corner here because all of these alums have given back to us, and Mount Rushmore is only 4. So it's not an easy task. I'm going to make more people upset than happy by this proclamation. So no
That's
offense.
The whole point. That's the hope.
Hopefully.
That's the hope.
Yeah. But
Stir the pot.
There are way too many to choose from. But just the four that come to my mind, Bob Costas is obviously a legend. He's slowly going away from broadcasting, but what he's done over the last few decades is historical. I think the versatility of Mike Tirico, we're going to see it firsthand these next few weeks. NBC has the Olympics and the Super Bowl. So he could literally be going from bobsledding to the NFL's biggest game in the matter of 24 hours. So there's not many people who could confidently do that, literally. I love Iron Eagle. I think his personality really shines, and he makes any analyst that he works with elite immediately. Look what he did with JJ Watt this year, right? This is JJ's first year, full season in the booth, and now people are talking about them as if they're one of the best in the biz, and it's hard to disagree with that. And then I'll go Sean McDonough. Sean, another guy who preaches versatility, does the Red Sox. He just did the college football playoff. He's elite. And those are four, but there are many, many more that we could sit here all day and talk about.
Well, you guys,
that's a good four, though.
Your thoughts on that? Yeah, it's good four. Follow him on social media at Jake Marsh 18. Obviously, check him out all over the PGA Tour and all over college basketball, man. We really appreciate your expertise and all your thoughts on this, man. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your week.
That's great
Thanks,
stuff
Jake.
from Jake. All right, plenty more to get to, including the transfer quarterback market is out of control. It's wild, but it could be even better if college football changed one thing. We'll tell you about it next. Breaking, former Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola has committed to Oregon. Raiola passed for a combined 48-19 and 31 in 2 seasons with the Huskers. The quarterback transfer portal has been absolutely wild so far this offseason, and we got plenty to get into it. Let's start talk about what this could mean for the NFL draft, though, because I know a lot of people are starting to tune into all of this to try and figure out what quarterbacks look like. Caroline, how much significance do you take out of the fact that Raiola is committing to Oregon when we know that Dante Moore may or may not commit to the NFL draft? We still don't know the answer. Does this signify something to you?
Yeah, it could, but it doesn't necessarily, because Dylan Raiola has come out and said, look, I am okay transferring to Oregon and sitting on the bench for a year if Dante Moore does in fact decide to come back to Oregon. That's exactly the path that Dante Moore took on his path to Oregon. He transferred from UCLA, even though, oh gosh, why is his name escaping me? Other Dylan, who transferred from Oklahoma. And Dante Moore said, I'm okay with sitting on the bench and taking a step back and developing, even coming off of a year starting at UCLA. So Dylan Raiola has said he is okay with being the backup for the year. I think what Oregon had to do, though, was take care of themselves. If Dante Moore was still up in the air, maybe I'll come back, maybe I'll declare for the NFL draft. Well, I'm sure Dan Lanning was stepping back and saying, look, if you decide to go to the NFL draft, we might be stuck in this, quarterback transfer portal game of musical chairs. And if we're left with no quarterback, we're kind of screwed. So we have to take care of ourselves. So it doesn't necessarily, say anything to me about what Dante Moore's future might be, but it makes so much sense. I think that Dylan Raiola, the writing was on the wall that he was heading to Oregon for quite some time, but I think there's going to be some questions. Will Stein is leaving, the offensive coordinator at Oregon. He's leaving to be the head coach at Kentucky. Drew Maringer has been promoted to the offensive coordinator, who has been in the building. He has been the co-offensive coordinator. He's been the tight ends coach at Oregon, but I think it's fair to at least expect some warming up period, or at least some growing pains as he steps into the primary play caller. And what does this Oregon offense and roster look like? Does Malik Benson decide to come back, or is he declaring for the NFL draft? He's been Oregon's leading receiver on the year. So there's at least going to be some changes and maybe some drop off on this Oregon offense. But I think that Dylan Raiola, if he does take a year to just sit the bench and learn, maybe that's the best thing for him in his development. Dante Moore has said the same as such for him.
I think there's a lot of value in sitting for a moment. And look, this is what Ole Miss is doing. Like Deuce Knight has committed from Auburn to come over to Ole Miss, which we immediately said, well, that must mean they know Trinidad Chambliss is out the door. Well, Trinidad's legal team is still suing the NCAA. They're fighting it in court whether or not he has extra eligibility. And if that turns out to be the case, then their hope is that Deuce Knight sticks around for a couple of years. Like, this seems to be the way things are developing. I keep looking at Raiola, and from the minute he stepped on campus in Nebraska, he was supposed to be a world saver. He was supposed to be that guy, and every year we've looked for it, hasn't really quite matriculated. I keep thinking maybe it's best to go somewhere where you're sitting for a minute, you sort of recalibrate everything, and you can come out, and instead of being that guy that everybody immediately puts all those expectations on, and the weird Mahomes comparisons based on the way he dresses and carries himself, all of these things, maybe that can die down for a minute and he can step back on the field and just be Dylan Raiola, the quarterback. That's not the only big-time quarterback on the move, by the way. Former Arizona State starter Sam Leavitt, who the college football world absolutely fell in love with, is headed to LSU after 2 years at Arizona State. You've got the helmet behind you. Come on, we excited? Is this a match made in heaven? Come on.
I am excited. I mean, LSU has a pretty good track record of Arizona State transfer portal quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels transferred into LSU from Arizona State, and in year 2, they had the #1 offense in the country, and he won the Heisman Trophy. So at least history is on their side here. But is this a match made in heaven? It better be. For Lane Kiffin's sake, it better be. LSU did not pay Lane Kiffin all of that money to be average. LSU is not committing as much money into the transfer portal and into NIL just to be middle of the road and go 9-3 and be Cheez-It Bowl champions. We love you, Cheez-It Bowl, but that's not necessarily where LSU's expectations are right now. My question about Sam Leavitt, I go back to that 2024 Arizona State season. How much of it was about Sam Leavitt and how much of it was about Cam Scadaboo, one of the most electric players in college football that year? Well, that was Sam Leavitt's freshman year. He has another year of starting under his belt, but he has been injured. So where is Sam Leavitt right now as a leader in his quarterback development? I think this is a win right now for Lane Kiffin and the LSU football program. Sam Leavitt was the #1 quarterback in the transfer portal. That's exactly why Lane Kiffin was brought to LSU, was to bring in the #1 talent, not just in the state of Louisiana, but in the country. So right now, Lane Kiffin is winning the press conference. That has to come to fruition in winning football games. But what I think has been maybe overshadowed by the Sam Leavitt news is the fact that Lane Kiffin was able to retain Trey Green, that 6'7" tight end, and then also to get Caden Durham, the running back, out of the transfer portal, who had initially entered the transfer portal. Now it was reported yesterday that he's heading back to LSU. So for me, it's not just landing Sam Leavitt that's been so impressive from Lane Kiffin, but it's also all of the pieces that Lane Kiffin has been able to retain as weapons for Sam Leavitt in the future.
Brilliantly said by you. The only thing I would add is that the miss here for college football in the calendar, we talk so much about the calendar, what it means for the kids and life and everything. Let's talk about marketing for a second. One of the things that the NFL has figured out brilliantly is how to market every step of their calendar. How do you extend, let it soak in. As a Raiders fan, I've watched the last meaningful football game I'm going to watch until September. Why is it the most popular sport in the world? Because they have figured out a way to turn free agency, the scouting combine, the draft, OTAs, all of these different things are their own marketing points for a sport. The real lost opportunity here for college football is that the calendar hasn't been moved in such a way that at the end of the regular season, at the end of the playoffs, I should say, after all of the dust settles, this should be when all of a sudden we're watching these transfer portals and we're turning it into their own TV specials. What quarterback is going where? When they treat the transfer portal like what it truly is, free agency in the NFL, there will be a win in marketing. All right, we got a win coming up next. We love to bring some superstar power to this show. The Game gonna join Yahoo Sports Daily coming up next. We'll talk music, we'll talk sports, we'll talk life. We're gonna talk everything with one of the biggest stars in entertainment next. Matt Leinart out here telling everybody that if Stafford wins another Super Bowl, he should be in the top 5 quarterback of all time conversation. That's been heated, and it's become heated. Joining us now to talk some Rams, one of the biggest fans. Just happens to be one of the biggest rappers in the world. Grammy-nominated, multi-platinum songwriter, producer, MC, actor, entrepreneur. I think I got all of it. Like, basically, a man that does literally everything. The Game joining us, man. Let's start with that tweet we just showed. All right, Stafford, you're a Rams fan. Stafford approaching top 5 all time if they win the Super Bowl. Is Leinart onto something?
Hey, so the thing about it, man, is number one, I'm a 49ers fan. You know, the Rams just got back, and I do love LA. I do think Matt is on to something, man. I was really close with Matt when he was at SC, man, and we got our, we go over the years, we've been back and forth about football and sports in general. But Matt's a smart guy, man. He might be on to something.
All right, well, then let's stick with your 49ers then. Are we feeling better about your Niners after taking down the reigning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, or with no George Kittle, maybe feeling a little nervous about their path to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I feel like I just feel like we got a good shot at the Super Bowl, like we always do, right? Like I think every year we're going to the Super Bowl. But you know, this year feels great, man. I was on I don't know if you know Gilly and Wallow, but I've been trolling them on Instagram about, about the Niners and the Eagles, like, every year. And so this year we were able to really just knock those guys out. I think we're gonna run through the Seahawks. Like we're gonna run through the Seahawks. The Rams, they got bear down, and yeah, it's gonna be crazy over there. But I can't wait to get to the Super Bowl to see who we play.
Now, see, I love talking about this stuff game because like it's all about who's in your phone, right? You're a 49ers fan. So when the 49ers are playing, you're pulling out the phone. Like you got famous people in your phone. Who's the trustworthy? Like I just gotta blow off some steam. This game isn't going right. Like who's the go-to trustworthy? And then who's the go-to, man, I'm gonna talk my talk.
I think the trustworthy is like my core friend group. I think over the years, because of how the Raiders and the Rams kind of were in LA and then dipped out, and then Chargers were down there in Dago, now they're up here. Like we get like football just like forces you to make like drastic life decisions as far as like who you love in this city, right? Because everything's coming and going. But as far as the Niners, I think I've done a good job with being able to get my kids on the bandwagon and my close friends. So if we're on something, I really got to just hit my group chat, my Niner group chat, which consists of my sons and my friends and stuff like that. But if I'm going smack talk and I'm going straight to Gilly and Wallow every single time, those guys, they think they know football, but they don't know football like I know football. So it's always good to show those guys, man.
That is just the best when you can just rub it in a rival's fan's face. But let's talk Christian
Yeah.
McCaffrey for a minute because he is just shy of 1,000+ yard rushing season, just shy of 1,000 yard receiving season. His 1,200 rushing yards in the season. Should we be talking more about CMC as MVP?
I think that, I love to just like really go crazy for my guys, but I'm in this like I don't want to jinx anything, so I'm really in appreciation mode, and I'm waiting for the 17th, and I want to see what the Seahawks got, what the Seahawks gonna bring. I think CMC is gonna be great, man. I just can't wait to see it, play out, in the near future.
All right, so here's a life would you rather for you in this situation. What would the game rather do? Be on the sideline watching the San Francisco 49ers win the Super Bowl at home this year or get to be part of the halftime show?
You know what, for
Ooh.
me, man, I think that you got these great performers, like what Kendrick did at the halftime show. That was amazing. Before I seen Rihanna do one, I seen Usher. I think I'm a sideline guy, man. I think that all the theatrics and I just don't got the dance moves that those Michael Jackson dance moves, man. I'm kind of a chill guy. So on the sideline, it'll be the sideline for me.
All right, so you are LA through and through. You've lived in LA for a massive portion of your life. I know you're a huge Lakers fan as well. But we did uncover this. Our researcher, producers extraordinaire, did uncover this photo of you in a Rams jersey. Explain that to all the Niners fans out there.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, so here's the thing. When again, I'm LA through and through. And so that there it is, right? And so what happened was when the Rams first got back and they were playing at the Coliseum, they would invite like, me and Candace Parker and YG and a bunch of other LA stars. And they would give you a jersey and just, it was so exciting to have the team back. And I had to explain this photo to, a lot of people. But I don't know. I think I look good in the Rams jersey too. And you know what? It's okay to support your city's teams, but the Rams left me for St. Louis and I left them for San Francisco. So I mean, I think we 6-7 in it out these days.
As somebody who's from St. Louis, I also can feel that. The Rams left LA for St. Louis. Rams left me in St. Louis for LA. So I totally
Yeah.
understand that. Which Rams jerseys are better, though? The one that you were wearing there or the ones that they're wearing now?
I think I think the old school. I mean, but I'm an
They're
old school
good.
guy. I just think those old school. I actually love the royal blue and like the yellow, the super old Rams jersey. I think that those
Mhm.
were dope. A lot of the new stuff they're doing is just it's like everything else. It's just losing that old school feel. So I'm always gonna go with the OG jersey.
Man, I feel you though. The minute you took the picture in that jersey, you know you're going to get creeped the rest of this is true. Like many years ago, I was a musician. I played the national anthem for the Raiders, and there's a rival for the Raiders. I played it on the fiddle, right? And so they gave me a jersey. I've got it hanging up in my house. It's a cool moment for me. One of the rival teams asked me to play the anthem, and the first thing I asked them was like, "Well, do I have to wear a jersey?" And they were like, "Yeah." I was like, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do it because I'll never hear the end of it." I love this. All right, so. Where since you're LA through and through, you're Lakers through and through, but you've got a 49ers portion of your fandom. So where are you on Lakers versus Golden State thing? Because man, it would have been easier to be a Golden State fan the last 10 years than it has been a Lakers fan.
Yeah. So when I was younger, my elders, especially my grandmother, she would take me to a lot of Laker games when they were playing at the Forum. And so I got to see, Magic and Kareem and Byron Scott. Yes, I'm that old. I'm just, I'm packing it on well. But yeah, I got to see the primetime Lakers. And so after, Kobe came and then, we got the Kobe and Shaq thing, like that just solidified it for me. Being an LA kid, that was a dream, man, to watch your team just win championship after championship. And then, again, me and Kobe, we were good friends. And so his passing really hurt me. And then LeBron coming in after that and keeping us going. And, with the guys over the years, like AD and everybody. And now we got Luka. Like it was just, the Lakers, man, we're always in good shape. And I would never be a Golden State fan. I don't care who leaves what.
Attaboy.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure, but I probably wouldn't be a Clippers fan either. They've
I'm not a
maybe
Clippers
turned
fan.
things around.
Yeah, no, I'm not a Clippers fan.
Are we buying into their recent winning streak?
I think the Clippers win again. Anything in LA winning is just good for the hometown people. And I appreciate the Clippers hanging out with us for a little while. But this is a Laker town, and it will always be.
All right, so I love lists, and you put out a list, your own top 100 LA rappers list, which, by the way, has to be wildly difficult considering how many legends have come out of there. You humbly put yourself fifth,
Truly.
by the way, which I respect the hell out of. Like that's it.
Yeah.
But what's it like? Talk to me a little bit about like the influence of some of those guys and what they meant to your life, because I think it's interesting that whole chapter when you talk about Snoop and Tupac and guys like that. It doesn't matter what kind of music you make, they influenced it. What do those guys mean to you?
I think Snoop Dogg notably is one of my best friends inside and outside of music. When I came in, he was the first person to really extend his arms and like reel me in and teach me and show me and like really make the pupil in me like respect the game that much more. And Tupac, who I never got a chance to meet, was of course, man, one of my biggest inspirations. Ice Cube, hometown guy that has transcended, from the streets to music into sports, man, and is always going to be a super duper big brother role model type of guy for me. And then everybody else on the list, it's just fitting, the things that Kendrick has, done over the last few years. And I mean, even before that, man, getting his just due is really cool to me. I'm just in support of like, everything LA, the city, the artists, the art, the people, this is home, man.
And you've been able to be at the top of the rap game for more than 20 years, but it's changed a lot. The very top, absolutely. It's changed a lot. Look, the rap game has changed. Music has changed. How you stay relevant, how you get hits has changed. What has been the biggest change in your mind?
I think the biggest change in my mind, if I can be 100% transparent with you, is just that I think as artists, as technology, just elevates, I think we lose a little bit of just emotion and what was real, like the new songs don't necessarily feel like the old songs used to make us feel. And I'm not saying that to, kick anybody. I'm just saying that when going through the creative process as a whole, as a human race, I think we need to get back in touch with the heart a little bit more,
Dude, that's like the way you say that. It's always remarkable. My first record deal, never had the success you had, obviously, but my first record deal was in '96, and I remember that it was a development deal, and the label was paying $10,000 a song. So I say that because back then it was $10,000 to go in the studio to record one song. So you worked tirelessly because that song cost so much money you couldn't do very much. Now you can just put out 1,000 songs a year and hope that one of them sticks. So like to your point, it's a different world because there's a different level of sort of cost behind all of it. Like going in the studio was something you used to have to work really hard to just get to the point that you could because too much money was leveraged in too many ways. Now,
Right.
if the song or the session sucks, you just go into Logic and do another one tomorrow. Like it's all throwaway at some point.
Yeah, these kids these days, and God bless them all. They're pumping out songs, man. Like like the faucet is running. But me still, man. Like I said, I'm just the older guy, and I'm gonna relax and make sure that my projects and the things that I put out are just they feel like they did when they were when music was at its greatest point. I'm gonna take my time. I'm a perfectionist. Got that from Dr. Dre. I won't ever let that go. And I'm just make sure that everything is super quality, man. And I owe that to my fans, and I just owe it to the game in general. Everyone has to do their part, and not just in music. You know what I'm saying? Coaching or being an athlete. Like those guys that were athletes, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, man, they had it tough, and they really, really got to it. I think. On a wide scale, artists in any genre and athletes were just getting a little bit lazy with the appreciation and just the overall you know we just got to get back to where it feels how it felt. I think that's just my take on it.
And you've got one of your brand new projects, Documentary 3, your latest studio album is coming out soon. What
Yeah.
can some fans expect from that one?
You can expect this to be one of the best albums of my career. You see how serious I got all of a sudden. The smile stopped. It's like he said. I've been in the studio for a little over like a year and a half, really perfecting this album. I might have a few days left just to fine tune it, but I'm gonna put out one of the greatest rap albums ever this year.
Mm. I remember one of our producers saying that the record's never done. It's just when you finally give up on trying to tweak it, man. It's just congratulations to you. That's great work. All right, so let's play a little game. We're going to play a game based on the game, and this is going to be simple. Game recognizes game. So we're going to name a sport accomplishment, and then if you respect it and it's real, that's game coming from the game. If you think it's overhyped, fake, corny, not to be trusted, any of those things, it's not game. All right, so you got this concept. You're ready for it. All right, let's start with the Clippers. They've turned things around after a terrible start. They're barely outside the play-in tournament. Game recognizes game. Are you going to salute the Clippers for what they've done? Is this real or is it fake to you?
You know what? I'm gonna salute the Clippers for turning it around and doing the thing, man. James is a good friend of mine, and again, I think he at this point is probably number somewhere in the top 10 on all-time scoring. And so with a guy like that on the team, man, I don't think it could ever be Cap. I think they really playing hard and trying to do something great over there.
All right, let's stick on the hardwood then, because LeBron just turned 41, but he's super vocal about how much he loves golf. He got a golf simulator installed in his house. He watches golf on YouTube all the time. So LeBron falling in love with another sport. Game recognize LeBron's golf game?
Yeah, game is definitely recognizing game's golf game. Cause look, I'm gonna tell you, like Jay would tell you, as you get older, as a man, we start to find ourselves doing things that we would never do when we were young. Now, I made I made my mother's gumbo from scratch last week. And so just imagine that. Like, I started off as, a street kid and then I came into the game as a gangster rapper. Now I'm over here, Rachel Ray in my way through life. So yeah, LeBron, do your thing, man, on the golf course, man.
Dude, that is so
Hey,
perfect.
I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to make a gumbo. So game recognize game to that.
Yeah, it's definitely hard.
Look, Gabe, I love being transparent on air. We were having a conversation on this show behind the scenes a couple of weeks ago about, because you and I are about the same age, the version of Snoop Dogg I grew up with, hell of a lot different than the version of Snoop Dogg we got today, right? Like the version of Snoop Dogg that I grew up, not nearly this one.
I got, I got this thing that, people keep asking me about Snoop in a few interviews that I've done about, our camaraderie and our friendship over the years. And I tell them the same thing, man. I said, there's three people in the world, man, that every single person on earth knows. And that would be Jesus, Michael Jackson, and Snoop Dogg, man. So, my LA hats off to him, man. It's like you turn on the TV, man, is if it ain't soup, then it's insurance. If it ain't pizza, then it's WWE. If it ain't WWE, it's the Olympics, man. Like Snoop, I told him, man, I said, you're going to get $1 from every business in the world, man. And he's like, yeah, for sure, cuz.
I mean, if you could invent a time machine and go back to the early 90s and tell every middle-aged parent in the world, by the way, Snoop Dogg's going to become one of the most influential pitch people of all time, they'd never believe it.
Nobody would go for that.
Oh, it's amazing. You've been incredible. By the way, the recent project, Gangsta Grills, Every Movie Needs a Trailer. That was a mixtape, came out in December. Check it out. While we wait for documentary 3, when it comes out, when it actually hits, you got to come back, hang out with us, talk to us some more. 49ers in the Super Bowl, you got to come see us there too, brother. We appreciate your time. Congratulations on all of the impact you've made in your life with your music, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Love you, man. Thanks for having me.
That was just great stuff from the game, man. It's just awesome. Goosebumps. All right, coming up, speaking of the 49ers, whose dream season is about to end? Notice we didn't say that when the game was on. All right, we'll cover it next. It's really the Bears versus everybody. Team of destiny this season so far throughout these playoffs. So we're going to talk about some fairy tales. All right. So we're going to figure out the fairy tale endings that are going to happen or that are going to end. So let's start, because every story needs to start with some sort of tragedy. Just watch a Disney movie where the parents always die in the first scene, and then you got to get your way through it. Okay, so we're going to start with the hopes that are about to come to an end. What fairy tale story in the playoffs do you think Caroline Fenton is about to come crashing to a halt?
Oh, I'm so glad the game isn't here with us anymore because to me it is San Francisco. We've already seen Seattle's defense absolutely positively dominate the 49ers in a big time game when there was something on the line for both of these teams. The number 1 overall seed was on the line, and in a battle between this high flying San Francisco offense and this stifling Seattle defense, it was Seattle that won the battle. Now, they've not won the war quite yet, but they won that battle. We've already seen this one play out just a couple of weeks ago. And look, so much credit to this 49ers team. They've been so tough and so resilient on both sides of the football with all of the injuries that they've faced. but eventually it has to catch up to you, right? And don't those kind of things rear their ugly heads when you take on the best teams in the National Football League in the games that mean the most? Well, that's how I view Seattle. And obviously, that's what the divisional round of the playoffs is. So not only do you not have Fred Warner, not only do you not have George Kittle, but not only do you not have Nick Bosa, but you also don't have George Kittle with him tearing his Achilles against the Eagles last week. Is Ricky Pearsall going to play? There's other question marks up and down the roster aside from the all-pro, Pro Bowl, high-impact players that we know they're not going to have. So I feel like at this point, the injuries are just going to be way too much to overcome for the Niners. So I'm going to say that San Francisco's fairy tale comes to an end.
This is such a good call by you. The problem is, sing it with me, we have to trust Sam Darnold. I don't know what the tune is, but I have a hard time.
We have to trust Sam Darnold.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. Yeah.
I am a little bit. That is the one thing. That's the one thing for all of us that it's like, yeah, but I feel like here's the way this whole movie works, right? Like it's a wide shot. Start with me. They're going through this whole thing while you're talking, and it's all of these highlights, and then you're going through it, and you get more and more confident as it pans left to right on the screen, and you see more and more of the Seahawks, and you see more and more of the greatness of their defense and their two running backs, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then all of a sudden the very end shot is just Sam Darnold going, "Her." And nobody wants to believe in that. I'm sorry. Like it's a big jump. I think you're right. On paper, everything you just said is right. I hope for the sake of the legacy of Sam Darnold that you're right, honestly, because what I don't want is 4 interceptions from Sam Darnold, and then all of a sudden everybody's right back to square number one. I hope Sam Darnold comes in and absolutely just has a game for the ages that we're talking about for the next 20 years, because I love narrative breakers. But right now, man, no matter how much we get through the rest of pretty, there's one really cautionary thing about the Seahawks. So for me, fairy tale more likely to end, I will take one of the other short odds here. I'll take the Patriots. And it's because of the recency bias of what I just saw from the Texans defense. My God. Reminder, as we always do in this situation, let's now remind everybody that Drake May has 2 wins over teams with winning records this year coming into the playoffs. So, yes, the Patriots got a win over the Chargers, but I kind of expected that. That's a shell of who the Chargers are supposed to be. I'm not sure how the Chargers put tape on it to get to where they were. So I'm ready to love you, the Patriots. I am. I'm ready to love again. Against that defense, I don't know, man. I have a hard time thinking that Drake May, Josh McDaniels, as dynamic as they've become as a tag team, are going to be able to carve up the Texans, because I just don't know that they have the weapons to take advantage of much from the Texans. The Texans can get handsy on defense. They can have some problems in the secondary. They're aggressive in the secondary, which causes some penalties. I don't know who from the Patriots is taking advantage of that. So I feel like the Texans are primed to find themselves in the AFC Championship game, simply because it's not a lack of belief in Drake May the same way I have a lack of belief in Sam Darnold at all. It's a just monstrous amount of belief specifically in the Texans defense. So let's take go ahead.
Yeah, I think this matchup is fascinating because both these two teams have a clearly stronger side of the football. That Drake May and this Patriots offense feels inevitable. This Texans defense is probably the best unit remaining in the field. But which side of the ball do we trust more? That's the weaker side of the ball. Do we trust the Patriots defense? Well, we have every reason to trust this Patriots defense after what they did to the Chargers in the wild card round. Do we trust the Texans offense? Look, they ran the heck out of the ball, over 5 yards a carry. Woody Marks could not be stopped against the Steelers, but also CJ Stroud coughed off the ball 3 times. So do we trust what we saw from the Patriots defense against a Chargers offense that has struggled after their offensive line injuries? Or do we trust a Texans offense going up against a truly dreadful Steelers defense? Like, which one is more true? Which one do we trust more? And frankly, I think I trust the Patriots defense more than I trust the Texans offense.
You are 1,000% right about that. In fact, I'll say this. I don't think there's any unit left in the playoffs, AFC or NFC, that I trust more than the Houston Texans defense. I don't think that there's any unit left in the playoffs that I trust less than the Houston Texans offense. So to your point, this is an absolute crapshoot because CJ Stroud and this offense in general is broken. Don't let a massive win twist what we saw, which was just not good enough from CJ Stroud. I understand how good the best of CJ Stroud has been. at some point we have to acknowledge that it's been a long time since we saw that. That version of CJ Stroud has not consistently been the version of CJ Stroud we've seen for a minute, to the point that a year in, it was the greatest rookie season. Frank Schwab on Inside Coverage said the greatest rookie season he'd ever seen at the quarterback position was CJ Stroud. We will have Frank on Friday. I cannot wait to get his opinion on CJ Stroud now, because that's how far this thing has fallen. Let's take the opposite side. I like the rise now. We need redemption. We need the story arc to get into the greatness of a Cinderella that finds their love, a Cinderella where the glass slipper fits, a Cinderella that everything works out for. Who do you think's fairy tale season continues after this weekend coming up?
I think it's the Bears. Finally, I am willing to admit that the Bears might just be inevitable with the amount of times that luck has just been on their side. And outside of luck, as much as that has been an asset for this Bears team, it's at home in Chicago at Soldier Field in January against a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford that came into the season with back problems, that banged up his finger against the Carolina Panthers. It just feels like everything is going Chicago's way. Now, the only caveat to that maybe gives me a little bit of pause is how much is Chicago still thinking about beating their bitter rival in the first round of the playoffs at home? How much are the Bears still thinking about Caleb Williams, grating the cheese on national television, Ben Johnson saying F the Packers in the locker room, Ben Johnson and his excited handshake with Matt LaFleur after the game? Are the Chicago Bears still so caught up on beating the team that they hate the most of any other team in the NFL that's clouding what they have in front of them? Because this is a young team. This is a team that's inexperienced in the postseason. This Rams team, they've been there before. Quarterback's been there before. Coach has been there before. This entire roster has been there before. So are the Chicago Bears able to stay focused on the path ahead of them? That's a question mark for me. But man, if it's not intoxicating to just fall in love with the luck that this team has had.
Well, and I don't think that the NFL did the Rams any favor putting this game, this is my weekly rant with you, putting this game Sunday night. Like, we knew that the game's going to be cold. We know the Sunday expected to be this, according to Chicago newspaper right now. The Sunday weather is supposed to be, quote, bitterly cold, temperatures as low as 8 degrees and a 55% of precipitation. So you're talking about wind chills that they're saying right now could be in the negative degrees at kickoff. That doesn't feel great to me for a Rams team. And according to many sites right now, Sam Darnold's record in cold weather games as a starter, 1-9. So I'm with you as much as Stafford. Sorry, I said Stafford. Why do I always do that? It's Stafford, 1-9. Thank you. There is a spot here for me where I spent much of the last month talking about, if I'm the Rams, I don't want to have to go to Soldier Field. Now I'm the Rams, and I have to go to Soldier Field. So I don't like any of that. I think you're right. I think there's a real chance, even though I'm not convinced that the Bears are a great team, I am convinced that whatever deal they made with the devil is working for them. Whatever voodoo dolls they bought in New Orleans last year at the Super Bowl is absolutely working. And who cares if they're the better team? I think they have a real shot. I'll go with you. I think they have the best shot of their fairy tale season continuing. We'll continue tomorrow right here at 9 a.m. Eastern, as we are Monday through Friday. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching Yahoo Sports Daily.